Hey, how you guys doing? I'm going to show you a very simple way to increase the quality of your C920 and your C922 cameras. A couple things to note before we get started. A lot of this will be heavily dependent on the size of your room, your camera placement, and above all, the most important thing that you can do to increase the quality of your streams is lighting. Lighting is very, very important. If you're going to sit in a dark room and you're going to rely on your monitor lights to kind of light your face, your camera's going to throw off, especially what we're going to do, it's going to throw off a lot of that stuff. So make sure you have very proper lighting. You can either go the route of getting a couple soft boxes, a couple umbrella lights, or if you want to go the complete cheap option, I will have another option for that too. But before we get started, I'll show you how I have my lights in my room set up now. Okay, so this is my room. You'll notice I have a softbox light that kind of watches this corner and lights up the green screen on that side. This light is not facing me. My umbrella light, which kind of looks like it's facing me, but it is not. It's kind of tilted to the side. This is actually used to light up the green screen behind me. And then the light right here, this softbox light that's kind of pointed up, this one is actually what I use to light myself up with. The reason I do not point that directly at me is if I do, since my camera is kind of a side placement camera, what it'll end up doing is it will super blow out the side of my face with light, whereas this side will kind of cast the shadow on my shoulder and everything else. And so it doesn't work the best for me. So what I do is kind of angle it up and allow that light to kind of bounce off the ceiling and use that to subtly light me, I guess we should say. Now, if you do not, I will leave a link in the description of where you can get some softbox lights as well as some umbrella lights if that's the route you choose to go. If you cannot afford those, here is a very cheap and easy solution. Let me go ahead and disable this camera. This is a very cheap and easy solution. Okay, this is just a normal clip-on light. This is what I first started with because I did not have these lights. You go get yourself a nice LED bulb. And if you clip this onto your desk and you turn it on, you find out it is so incredibly bright. Go get some wax paper. Wax paper, tape that on, and you use as many layers as you need to diffuse the light as much as possible so that it's not insanely bright. I used to have two of these that were actually on either side of my monitor that it just looked like I was getting ready to get hit by a car. They were so incredibly bright. But a couple layers of wax paper, and that kind of makes the difference. Now, be careful when you do wax paper. If that bulb comes in contact with that wax paper, it is going to melt, it's going to smoke, so make sure that you have, the bulb is not touching that wax paper. If you need to, put it kind of like an arc and a bubble that you can give that room so nothing touches. I didn't have to worry about that. I bought an LED light and one of those clear lights, so it was not the yellowish tint to it. But this worked out for the longest time until I got these. So this is a very, I think between, oh, and then I just hit my microphone. Me doing this was about, I want to say total for everything was like 10 or 12 bucks. Like it's not, this is a very cheap and easy solution and it does work. But if you would like to shell out for the softbox lights and the umbrella lights, you can go that route too. But that is the most important thing you can to make your camera look, have really good quality. Okay, so let me bring my OBS over. Okay, so a lot of you guys know that if you go into OBS for your camera, you right click and you go to properties, it will pull up your camera here, and a lot of times people will go onto configure video and they'll make adjustments here. And any adjustments you make, let's say you finally get that to where you want and you're happy with it, well then you restart your computer, you shut down OBS, and come to find out, you go back in and these settings have all changed and reverted back to what they were. They always go back to default, they never save. So do not use this program at all. I will actually show you, and you'll notice that there's some adjustments made on here, but they were not made on here. They were made on a different program, and I'll show you guys. And again, that link will be in the description as well. But what you're gonna wanna do is go to Logitech and download Logitech G Hub. Once you do, select your platform and your OS. It should pre-fill for you. And then download. Once you download, go through and install that program. Okay, so after you have that done, what you're going to do after you install that program is it's going to look like this for you. It'll pull in. So again, for me, I have both these cameras, so it's going to have them both listed. If you have one or the other, then it'll just list the one. So what you want to do is select the camera that you're going to be using. So for me, this side-facing camera is my C922. Okay, and it's going to take you to this window, and you'll notice that if you try to click anything here, you can't adjust anything. If you try to go to video and you try to adjust it, it won't let you adjust it. So what you need to do is on both camera and video, so we'll start with video first. On your video filter, hit the drop down and you'll notice that it has these ones already in place. You need to click add a new filter. Once it adds that new filter, you can name the filter if you want. I didn't really bother with it because I knew this is the only one I was going to use. So just click add and it'll just say new video mode. And then once you click and you add that, you'll notice that now you are able to adjust all of these settings here. Same thing you need to do over on camera. Hit the drop down. It'll be these three as the default. Add a new camera mode. And once you do, you can adjust this. One of the things to note too is that if you are trying to configure this program and you don't have OBS open, then your camera should have everything right here. Everything should be there for you. It should detect your camera and everything should be fine. The reason why it does not detect mine is because currently I'm using mine in OBS. So, and if you would like to do it that way, it's perfectly fine. Just bring over your OBS and bring over everything, and then you can make your adjustments. One of the things I will tell you though is that any adjustments you make sometimes is not instantaneous. Like if you try to take this and drag it all the way over, sometimes it takes a second for it to kick off. Sometimes it's immediate. So again, if you try to slide it left or right and you're not letting go of the mouse button, then nothing happens. So just keep that in mind. One of the things that's important for me too is that since I have a standing desk, I tend to move around a lot. So for me, by default, this program will put the priority as exposure. That's going to be completely your call and depending on what you're going to do. If you stream and you're kind of an animated person and you tend to move around a lot, then prioritize frame rate. If you just kind of sit still and you don't really do anything, then leave exposure. This is going to be completely what you decide to do. Okay, so one of the things that I know a lot of people have issues with, and I've had issues with, is I hate the autofocus. This thing will autofocus constantly, sometimes for no reason at all. So go ahead and uncheck auto, and you should be fine. Once you uncheck auto and you make the exposure, I left as auto because that aspect of it is really super finicky. So the slightest adjustments, they're very extreme adjustments. Even the slightest ones are very extreme. One thing I did know is that this zoom function does not seem to do anything. Maybe this is for other cameras, but this one does not do anything for the C922. I have not tried it out with the C920 yet, but I will. But again, that's up to you if that's something that you want to do. Once you're done there, go over to video. Make sure your new video mode filter is selected, and then from there you should be able to make all of your adjustments. Again, depending on the lighting that you have, the size of your room, how the light reflects in your room, will be whether or not you want to uncheck auto for white balance. For me, I just decided I wanted to manually control that myself, and I didn't want to have to worry about doing all that because I know how the lighting is in my room. So these settings are all kind of very specific to how you want to do them. You could use my settings, but if for you it's either incredibly dark or it just looks like garbage, again, it's going to be very dependent on your own lighting and your own camera placement. Once you make all these settings and you make all these adjustments, you'll notice this little icon up here. And if it'll by default, it will be unlocked like this. What you want to do is just go ahead and lock it, and what that will do is it puts it as a persistent configuration. So once it's persistent, whether you restart your computer or not, it's always going to hold these settings for you, and you don't ever have to worry about making these adjustments ever again. So go through, after you're done, lock it down, persistent, done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. All right, so now that brings us back to OBS and your camera. So when you first add your camera, I know a lot of people tend to just hit the drop down, select their camera, and then they're kind of done. Again, depending on whether you're an animated person, you want to walk around, or what you're trying to achieve, it's going to be very dependent on you. Some people want to go the 1080p route. Some people don't care. And perfectly honest with you, if you're not going full screen with yourself, then there's really no reason to do 1080p. So again, that's going to be very up to you. But I was more concerned with wanting the 60 FPS than I was wanting a 1080p image. Because if you do 1080p, then you're locked in at 30. 720p, you can have 60. So with that selected, in your drop down, instead of having it as device default, select custom. Specify your resolution of the 720, 1280 by 720. FPS, select 60. If you select highest FPS or match FPS or whatever the case is, and you do anything, any of these other two besides 60, you're going to leave it up to your camera to make that decision, and sometimes it just defaults it to 30. So the best thing for you to do is select 60, and then you're going to go from there. Now, as far as this color space, like you can leave video format as any, and to be honest with you, you can leave the color space as default. Once you select it, like I'll even go through here and do it. It'll freeze your camera for a minute. But let's say, okay, we had it on 709 and we'll do 601. It'll flash like that, but you really notice that, I mean, there's not really a whole lot of a difference to it. So you can just leave this as default and be done with it. Same with color range. Right now I have mine on full, but I've had it on partial, and I don't really say that you can really notice anything about it. Like, to me, I guess partial looks, well, it looks a little lighter, I suppose. So for me, I just leave it as full. Again, every time that you change that, it's going to flash and do all that stuff. Once you're done, just go ahead and click OK. Now, you are not done. Now that this is, a lot of people, once they do this, they're done. They think they're done, and then you're like, hey, I'm good to go. I will give you, though, that the way my camera looks right now was not from just doing the Logitech G Hub. From there, you need to right-click, go to Filters, and you need to add a couple of filters. For me, obviously, I have my chroma key, which is for my green screen in the background. So leave that on. Sharpen, we'll go to Sharpen in a second. Because Sharpen is, some people hate Sharpen and some people love it. So that's really going to be more of a your preference thing. So if I were to deactivate Sharpen and color correction, this is the default way that the camera sees me. It looks like I have not seen the sun in 3 years. Now, keep in mind, too, that this is the way the camera sees me, but this is also the way the camera sees me, even after I made all of these adjustments. You'll notice when you go to set yours up, all of those are at 50%. 50% are auto. So if you're really going to make your camera look a lot better by doing this. So after you made your settings there, close that. So when you add color correction, and to add color correction, you just do plus, color correction, and then I just had a light thing fall. You're going to do color correction, and once you select it, you can name it whatever you want. Just let the default as color correction, and then go through and make your selections. These, again, is going to be very specific to your room and very specific to your lighting, so how you set this up is going to be entirely up to you. You could copy my settings, but again, it could look like garbage for you. So just play with this and get it how you want, but it is a night and day difference between having something that I look super bright in and something that's a little more relaxed with the colors. So again, play with this that best suits you. Now for Sharpen, you'll notice Sharpen is like very small details. Some people might want to leave this out, and if you want to leave this out, that's perfectly fine with you. For me, I put Sharpen on, and all that really does is really kind of pull in the details. It pulls in more details of like your hat or of your shirt, or for me, even my beard. If I disable Sharpen, you can't see any white hair in my beard, but for whatever reason, when you enable it, you can. But just play with this. So like mine's at 17, but feel free to, like, you could sit there and super play with this however you wanted to. You'll see with it off, it's more of a blurred image. So again, with whatever you're trying to go that route, and you should be good to go. Then once you do that, you are done. Now your camera is going to do 720p at 60 FPS. You have adjusted all of your settings that you can in Logitech G Hub, and then you checked it to make sure it's persistent. Remember the lock. Lock that down so that it is persistent, and will save even when you reboot your computer. After you are done, go through OBS, add your camera. If your camera's already added, go to Properties, and make sure you set up, specify your resolution and specify your frames per second. Be honest with you, the rest you can leave default. If you want to do full color range, do full color range. And then once you're done, go through and add your filters and make all the adjustments for your filters. Once you're done, you're good. You'll notice that the way the camera looked when even those filters were off versus the way it looks now is really kind of a night and day difference. It's not so blown. And I see a lot of people that stream that just add the camera and then they call it good. Really, the way your camera looks and the way you look on the screen is going to be dependent on your lighting, and is going to be dependent on you adding those filters and making those corrections to your camera. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down below in the comment section. Like the video if you liked the video. Thumbs it down if it didn't help you at all and I'm a piece of garbage. Whatever you need to do, you do it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them though, and I will answer as many as I can. You guys have a good night. I will see you later. Peace.